No.
And before we get into the Players Era Festival, explain this Michigan team to me, right? Because I watched them against Wake Forest in the first week of the season, and I left that a little bit underwhelmed, right? Like I thought that they would be a little bit better than they looked in that game. But since then, they got a double-digit win against TCU. They got a double-digit win against Virginia Tech. And tonight, they beat a good Xavier team by 25 points in a game that looked like they made Xavier look like they were playing back in the Atlantic 10 or the MAC again, right? It was not an impressive
Yeah.
performance from Sean Miller's team. Is Michigan for real? Like, do I need to buy into them?
Yeah, so even with the Wake Forest game, like if you go back and watch it, man, they were up double digits. Like
Mm-hmm.
they were doing whatever they wanted. But one thing about Michigan is that they go through these spells where they literally will pass the other team the basketball, or they'll just dribble off their foot, or they'll just throw errant passes. And they're one of the worst teams in the country when it comes to turnovers. And the one thing that they did today, they took care of the basketball for the most part, especially early on. I'm like, we're talking, they're in bye games and they're doing like 16 turnovers in like one half, which is crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But today, in the first, I believe, 15 minutes, they only had two. And then when you're not turning over the ball, one thing I said coming into this year, with how this team is built, they could be one of the best shooting teams in the entire country. But they have about 7 or 8 guys who could let it loose from 22, 23 feet, and nobody would say anything about it. LJ Kaysen, the freshman, is one of the this freshman class for the Big Ten. This is the best freshman class I have seen, and I don't even know. It's ridiculous. So LJ Kaysen is nice. Reuben Jones is a great defender. Namari is a great defender. Roddy Gill and Trey are probably going to be the ones who are going to lead from the outside. Um, you have Sam Walters, really good shooter. Will Cheddar, really good shooter. You have Vlad Golden, who I felt like this was a game where he can get his mojo back, and he had 18 tonight. Danny Wolf, he's probably the man. He could look like a top 5 pick for 3 straight possessions, and then for 2 possessions, you're like, why is this guy in the game right now? It's nuts. He's like 7 feet tall, but he plays like a shooting guard. It's kind of insane to watch at times. He reminds me of like modern day John Lure. Um, Very good player. Are they for real? They're for real as long as they don't turn over the ball. If they start turning over the ball, they're not a good basketball team. And what they did tonight was they took care of it as one, but two, defensively, they really hunkered down with Namari and Ruben, especially. Those guys can get after guards and they can make life hell for them. And they're positionally big. Like Namari is all of 6'3", 6'4". Ruben is all of 6'5". Roddy Gill is all of 6'4". Like these are bigger guards on the perimeter. So when they're playing a quicker guard and they're trying to get space, it's not the same being able to shoot over someone who's 6'5", 6'6", who's able to stay with you. So tonight they showed what their ceiling can be. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to them taking care of the ball, and they did that tonight.
McCall, it's Dusty May starting 2 7-footers on the same roster. Like I knew he wanted to do that. I didn't know if it was going to work, and it kind of looks like it's working for him now. Is that something that I know you know him well? Is that something that you like you would expect to see from him?
No, not at all. Not when you watch his teams play at FAU. I mean, I guess you could say Elijah Martin was a starting power forward there for the last couple of years when they were having so much success. And I was a little bit skeptical, like how is this going to work with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden? And I think tonight was the first night that you saw, okay, this can work. Danny Wolf's coming in from Yale. He had a great career at Yale, the 2 years that he spent there, shot over 30% from three. And then you have Vlad, he is a 5-man. And Danny Wolf spent some time at the 5 spot at Yale. So it's like, okay, how is this going to work? Is the floor spacing going to be there? And to Ant's point, they just have to take better care of the basketball. But tonight's the night that's like, hey, I think this can work. because I mean, look, I saw Xavier live against Dayton in a charity exhibition back in October, and I know it's a charity exhibition, but I'm like, man, is this the second or third best team in the Big East? And they didn't play their best basketball today, but by any means. But I think you have to give Michigan credit. But playing those two front court players together was a bit of a concern for me going into the season. Just like, how is this going to work? Danny wants to play a little bit more on the perimeter, but again, he's a 7-footer just like Vlad is, and Vlad struggled coming into this game. And we saw Vlad dominate games and play with joy and catch it. And even when sometimes last year for FAU, things may have not been going well because they weren't living up to expectations, which is crazy to think about FAU having expectations because they've never had expectations before. But Vlad was still playing extremely hard, running the floor. He struggled, and he kind of looks out of sorts since he's been at Michigan until tonight. And it's great to see him, play well.